Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl released recently, and with it, we've seen a lot of people talking about Cynthia. Cynthia is one of the most notorious Pokemon trainers, let alone champions, in all of Pokemon. Her boss fight as the champion of the Sinnoh region is typically thought of as one of the hardest in the series, if not the single hardest, and it's actually one of the hardest single fights in the entire series as well. What if we judge Cynthia's team not by its merit as, an endgame boss as the way to stop the player from winning the game, but instead from a competitive standpoint? How strong is her team if we were to match it against other similar teams or other teams that could be formed within the meta that she plays, the Gen 4, Diamond and Pearl decks meta? Without further ado, let's take a look at Cynthia's team and how strong it actually is. So in talking about Cynthia's team, obviously there's a couple iterations that we have to look at. I'm going to talk about 3 iterations of her team, first being her original Diamond and Pearl team, then her Platinum team, and then finally her Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl team. I wanted to do it this way because if people wanted to click off and, not spoil themselves in case they wanted to be surprised for the remakes, then I wanted to give them the option to do that. Her Diamond and Pearl team is Spiritomb, Roserade, Gastrodon, Lucario, Milotic, and Garchomp, with Garchomp obviously being the most notorious. Now, I don't want to read into the specific movesets here because, Cynthia is an in-game trainer and she's going to be competing against mostly entirely in-game trainers as well, and so it doesn't seem fair to judge these Pokemon based on their individual movesets, but I do think that it is fair to look at them overall in terms of how good is their overall synergy. So when I look at these 6 Pokemon, there's a couple things that stand out to me. The first is there is no ground resistance. When I look at teams, ground resistance and immunities are really important because ground is one of the strongest offensive types, and so you need to make sure that you have Pokemon that are going to either resist or be immune to ground. Normally, grass types are a really good way to do that. However, Roserade is a dual type with poison typing, meaning you do lose that ground resistance. The next thing that I noticed looking at Cynthia's team is that it's not very fast. You do have Garchomp, which is a above average Pokemon. For a long time, up until pretty much this current generation with Regieleki, the standard used to be over base 100 is fast, under base 100 is a little bit slower. Obviously, there's nuances within that, but I would say that was a general guideline. So anything over base 100 speed, I would consider fast up until Regieleki was introduced. Garchomp obviously being 102 base speed, it does get above that. However, a lot of these Pokemon are pretty slow. Lucario is not fast in the base 100. Milotic, Gastrodon, Spiritomb, these are all Pokemon that are middling to slower. And Roserade is, it's on the faster end. I believe it's base 95, but it's not faster than Garchomp. And so let's say your opponent had a Garchomp and they wanted to click Dragon Claw. There would be actually no way for this team to switch into that, right? Even if you had, let's say the Garchomp was 1 HP, but you were in range of Dragon Claw, there's not really much you can do with the Diamond and Pearl version of this team, obviously. Like, you can't switch anything in because you don't have a resistance, and you can't outspeed it because nothing's faster than Garchomp. So to me, that seems like a pretty big oversight. If I were Cynthia, I would definitely be taking a step back and paying a little bit more attention to the speed. I do also think that having both Gastrodon and Milotic is a little redundant. With Gastrodon, obviously, you already get the water typing from Milotic, and you already get the ground typing from Garchomp, so I'm not entirely sure what Gastrodon is doing on this team. It'd be one thing if you were really worried about electric types, but you only have 1 weakness in Milotic and you already have 2 other resistances. So I don't really think that that's a super good decision personally, in terms of why Gastrodon's here. And I just feel like Gastrodon isn't really doing that much a lot of the time. Like, Gastrodon, obviously, it does have its niche. It's really good at, dealing with opposing water types. She has Sticky Hold. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt and assume she means to have Storm Drain, especially since she has Surf on this Milotic. Regardless, I don't really see what Gastrodon is doing here. It definitely feels like it is kind of a dead slot, and I think that it could be replacing it with something faster. I think could definitely be viable. The thing about Spiritomb is that although it has, in original Generation 4, there was no Fairy type, so it has no weaknesses. Not having weaknesses isn't enough to make a Pokemon good. It also has to have the base stats. And Spiritomb is somewhat bulky, but it's not so bulky that it really feels like a really significant, defensive wall or anything. So I think that you really have to make up for it with the moves to make sure that it does something. So Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split are going to be good options on it. You can also try and make it a little bit more offensive, although it doesn't have the best offensive stats, but they're not horrible either. So yeah, I think Spiritomb is kind of a middling to lower tier Pokemon personally. Lucario is in a bit of an awkward spot again. I think the real thing here is that the ground weakness is pretty significant. I would love to see maybe a setup Lucario with Swords Dance or Nasty Plot. I think that could be a lot stronger, though it doesn't really have that much support going into it. Lucario overall is okay. Overall, I would say this team is alright. Like, just to kind of summarize everything all at once, I think it's fine, right? Like, I think that this team overall has some things that it does well. Obviously, Garchomp is strong. If you gave Milotic something like Icy Wind, it could be a really good supportive Pokemon. You do have like a bunch of Pokemon that benefit from speed control, though you don't have that much speed control. Again, Icy Wind is going to be really important. If you had Tailwind or even Bulldoze, honestly, is probably fine to like get a little bit of speed control on this team. But yeah, overall, I think the main issues are that a lot of the Pokemon don't feel like they're contributing as much as they should. Roserade, Spiritomb, Lucario, Gastrodon, all of those feel like they're not going to be star players a lot of the time. So I feel like they could probably be replaced by something better. Even Garchomp and Milotic don't really have the full support needed to fully succeed. So overall, I would say this team is fine. Like, I think that if it were not an in-game boss where, you know, they have a level advantage and, you know, it's a bunch of good Pokemon compared to, like, most in-game teams, I think given that context, Cynthia is definitely strong, but in a broader competitive context, I think she's actually quite weak. I don't need to talk too much about her Platinum team, but yeah, I mean, basically her Platinum team is the same Pokemon with Togekiss over Gastrodon. I think this is a really smart addition. Cynthia clearly looked at her team and decided, you know, hey, I have no ground resist, so I'm gonna add Togekiss. You know, in current generation, it gets the Fairy typing, so it's a good Pokemon, and also has access to good support moves. In doubles, you can use Follow Me, Helping Hand, Yawn, things like that. In singles, you can always run Thunder Wave and Air Slash, as well with Serene Grace, making it a really annoying Pokemon to go up against. In some games, it gets Tailwind, in some games it doesn't, so it kind of, I don't want to read too much into Tailwind, but it could have some form of speed control as well. But I do think that Togekiss improves this team a lot. If you're playing doubles, you can do something like Follow Me plus Swords Dance with Garchomp, Follow Me plus Swords Dance with Lucario. I do typically like to have a rule where I don't like to have more than 2 Pokemon that are defensive on a team, or Pokemon that are specifically there just to be, you know, bulky and supportive. And so Togekiss, Milotic, and Spiritomb is like kind of breaking that rule, because these 3 Pokemon typically lean more into being supportive pieces rather than offensive pieces. But with the right movesets and stuff, you could probably change that. And of course, it's more of a blanket rule than you know, something hard and fast. I do think that this is worth noting, though, that even changing one Pokemon could have pretty big implications for the rest of the team. Adding Togekiss over Gastrodon improves this team like pretty significantly, in my opinion, just because Togekiss is a good Pokemon. It's better than Gastrodon overall, I would say. And then it helps a lot of the issues on the other team, which is that it's a bit faster than Gastrodon, so it at least improves your speeds a little bit. It can offer speed control under certain situations, and it also gives you a ground resistance and immunity. And it offers redirection as well, which in doubles is like kind of crucial. So overall, I would say that if I had to rank these teams, I would say I would give her original team a C. I would give this one probably a C+, maybe even a B-. So it's definitely moving up. Now, we are going to talk about Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, because I imagine that's what a lot of people came here to see. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend you click off now. Looking at Cynthia's rematch team, it is the same 6 Pokemon from Diamond and Pearl. However, the movesets are all significantly improved. This probably gives us a better insight into what Cynthia would actually use. So we see Spiritomb as kind of like a bulky mixed attacker. Probably, yeah, quiet in nature with Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse, Psychic, and Sucker Punch, intending to kind of take advantage of Ghost, good offensive typing, Spiritomb's good defensive typing, and then just kind of an opener that is, I guess, intended to wear down the opponent. Also uses Citrus Berry to give a little bit of extra survivability. If Spiritomb trades 1-for-1, it's probably a good trade most of the time. Cynthia's original team is single, so in this context, we'll look at it in terms of singles. Roserade is here just to be a general special attacker with decent move coverage. One improvement you can make to this Roserade set is to give it Sleep Powder or Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is not super impactful, and Sleep Powder would be at least give it the option to swing fight sometimes, but since this is in-game, they probably didn't want it just spamming Sleep Powder, so that's probably why Roserade doesn't have it. Obviously, there's some slight optimizations. Roserade should probably have Natural Cure over Poison Point. Milotic, I personally think competitive is better, but Marvel Skill is also decent as well. And in certain metas, of course, Sandvale, Garchomp is going to be better, but we can kind of get a sense of what Cynthia wants to do here. Roserade is a fast special attacker, or a decently fast special attacker with Expert Belt. Gastrodon's a bulky physical wall that runs Scald, Earthquake, Sludge Bomb, and Rock Tomb. A bit of an interesting moveset. I think Recover could go a long ways there. We have an Inner Focus Nasty Plot Lucario. I do like that Cynthia took my advice and decided to make this a setup mod. A bulky Milotic with Recover, Mirror Coat, Ice Beam, and Scald. Basically trying to take no damage from physical attacks, so you force it to special attack you with both Flame Orb and Scald, and then if they use special attacks, you can use Mirror Coat to potentially do big damage. Last but not least, of course, there's Garchomp with Dragon Dance, Earthquake, Swords Dance, and Poison Jab. Ordinarily, you'd probably run Rock Slide, like if this were original Gen 4, but because of Fairy types, you probably do want to run Poison Jab. I'd have to think more about it, though, depending on, like, the types that are present, since, like, most of those you'd probably rather Earthquake than Poison Jab anyway, but Poison Jab is also good for, I guess, grass types, but yeah, again, you have Dragon Claw for those, so yeah, I mean, this is a much better team. The original flaws are still present, though. Although the movesets are way stronger, Cynthia still has no ground resistances, and she's still really slow. So even though, of course, these sets are way better, and these, I would say that, like, overall looking at the team, it looks better just because the sets are better. It doesn't solve the fundamental issues with the team, which is that it's very slow. In addition, I didn't want to talk about this in the original games because it doesn't seem fair, but in the remakes, I think it is fair, which is that Fairy typing is a really big deal for Cynthia's team. Specifically, she's pretty weak to it. Of the Pokemon that can switch into Fairy type attacks, you have Roserade, who presumably doesn't have any bulk on it. You can't really switch in Spiritomb or Garchomp to it because they're super effective, or they're weak to it. And then Lucario is a pretty frail Pokemon in the first place, so it's not going to want to switch into like Moonblast or Play Rough most of the time. Most Pokemon will be able to do 50% to Lucario with Play Rough or Moonblast, or even like opposing Togekiss, Dazzling Gleam. So there aren't really any good Fairy type switch-ins, or there aren't many. You do have both Gastrodon and Milotic, who can switch into certain Fairy type moves, but the thing is, a lot of the time they're not going to threaten anything in return, and although you do have one resistance in Roserade, Roserade's pretty frail, and so most Fairy type Pokemon, like Togekiss for example, are going to have a coverage move that, when combined with Dazzling Gleam, can potentially pick up a KO. So I'm not crazy about this team defensively. I think that's the real thing, and even offensively, like, I actually think that in some situations, it's okay to run a team that doesn't have great defensive synergy in singles, because even if a team lacks defensive synergy, as long as you have good offenses, you can sometimes make up for that a little bit just by making smart trades and dealing out offensive pressure, but I wouldn't say that this team has it. I mean, in terms of the offensive Pokemon, you have Garchomp obviously is the main centerpiece of this team. You do have Lucario, who has Nasty Plot, but the thing about Lucario is that, number one, at +2, it might not even KO anything. Even if you do find yourself with the opportunity to set up, you may not KO anything in the first place. And then even if you could KO something at +2, there's no guarantee that you'd be able to set up on it. And even if you do set up and get a KO, you're probably going to be able to be revenge KO'd by something else. For example, Garchomp, who's one of the best Pokemon in the meta. So with all that in mind, I don't think Lucario is super impactful. Again, I do think Milotic and Gastrodon is really redundant, even more so now that you see their move pools. Like, you already have all of Gastrodon's move coverage between Garchomp and Milotic, except for Rock Tomb, which isn't you're not using for damage anyway. Again, the main issues are still here, which is that the speed is lacking and the power is lacking as well. Overall, this team is a C in my opinion. Like, the sets are definitely better, and it's great to see Cynthia put some effort into her sets, but I do think that overall she does need to pay a bit more attention to her composition as well. Last but not least, let's look at Cynthia's rematch teams. Again, if you don't want to be spoiled, I'd recommend clicking off before we talk about this. We see that there's slight differences here. So first of all, Spiritomb gets Will-O-Wisp, which is a really good support item. Roserade in the first rematch is still here. This looks like the same team to me, except with a couple small changes. You have Psychic over Nasty Plot, Thunder Wave on this Thunder Wave. It's Token Kiss over Gastrodon, so that again, that does improve the team a lot, which is solid. Thunder Wave Air Slash Serene Grace Token Kiss is definitely solid. Same moveset here, same moveset here, same moveset in this Roserade against Sleep Powder would be better. And then in the second rematch, you do have PZ with Expert Belt and Hyper Beam over Roserade, which again, it doesn't defensively fix anything for you, but it does at least give you a little bit more offensive power, so I do like that. Once again, I think that this is an improvement. I think that, like, just like in the Platinum version of her team, this does make things better. The addition of Togekiss is a big deal. You get rid of Gastrodon's redundancy, you do get a little bit more value out of your Spiritomb as well. You still are struggling when it comes to Fairy types, especially the second rematch team, because now you actually have no resistances, and I didn't like Gastrodon on the team, but it at least was a Pokemon that could switch into certain Fairy type attacks, whereas Milotic is now kind of your only switch in, and I guess kind of Togekiss, that you really want Togekiss to be healthy so it can T-Wave and Air Slash stuff. So this version, I mean, I think it's an improvement, right? I don't think I have anything crazy to say about it. It is a better version of her previous team, although dropping Roserade again does make you a little weaker to Fairies, but Porygon Z is a better Pokemon, so it's probably worth it. Once again, the big issue here is speed control. You have a lot of middling speed Pokemon. Togekiss, Lucario, Porygon Z, Milotic. These are all relatively middle speed, with Garchomp being slightly faster and Spiritomb being slightly slower. And you don't really have any really meaningful speed control with these sets, of course. You do have Thunder Wave and Togekiss, but that's kind of it. And Sucker Punch on Spiritomb, Extreme Speed on Lucario. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's kind of all you have. And so I think that if this team ever finds itself out of position, it's going to have to sack Pokemon, which is not always a great thing to... It's not a good space to be in. So overall, I would say that both these teams get B minuses. They're fine. They have some stuff going for them. They do have a scary Garchomp with Swords Dance, and Yachi Berry. They have, you know, several good Pokemon. I would say Garchomp, Milotic, Togekiss are all good Pokemon. Spiritomb and Porygon Z are okay, and then Lucario is like meh, but it can be good in the right circumstances. So overall, I don't have that many critiques of the individual Pokemon, but I think the overall composition is really lacking, and I think the real kind of... The Pokemon that stick out to me are these slots. The Lucario in the slot and the Roserade / PC slot. If you're going to have a Steel type, you probably want it to function as a Steel type, and Lucario doesn't really function as a Steel type because it doesn't have the right defenses, like defensive stats, to really allow it to be a sponge, which is normally the role that Steel type Pokemon play. And then, obviously, if you want a fast special attacker, it should probably be like actually fast and not just middling speed. So I think that if you had better speed control in this team, you could definitely do a lot more with it. I think if Lucario were a better defensive piece, or even, yeah, just like a different typing, like the resisted Fairy, then that would probably also help. But in its current state, I think this team is like probably C+, B- at best. So obviously this might surprise some people, since Cynthia is typically thought of as one of the strongest trainers in game. So if you're interested in a follow-up video where I go through how to make Cynthia's team as strong as possible, let me know in the comments down below. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon for more Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl content. Bye bye.